بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So I'm hoping all of you have done the homework, yeah? What does that mean, not quite? You too. Ahmed. Submitted it. I sent a link. Okay. Make sure all of you do it, okay? Right. We've only got one chapter left, which is the last part of the book, which is regarding funerals. Now, funerals in Arabic is known as Kitabul Janaiz. Janaiz is the plural of Janaza. It's a book of funerals. And it's normally mentioned after Kitab al-Salah, even though within this chapter you have Salat al-Janazah, but you also have other issues as well of how to wash and how to bury the dead and other etiquettes. So therefore, the ulama separate it into a separate chapter titling it Kitabu al-Janaiz. Now, there's a lot of information that can be mentioned regarding it and khilafat and so on. But the way we have it in our book is Ibn Baz rahimahullah, and it's all in yellow. Remember we said yellow is what Ibn Baz said. He basically summarized it, I think, in about 12 points. So basically he just summarized the whole of Fiqh al-Janaiz in about 12 points, and Shaykh Haytham Sarhan hasn't really expanded on it. He didn't really expand on anything apart from one issue right at the end, which is the ruling on visits in the graves. So for that reason, we are going to try to stick to the book that we have in front of us for now, which is to stick to what has been written. And I might mention a few extra points here and there, but we're not going to go into too many extra points, and inshallah we can study those points later in the bigger books, bi'ithnillah. The second thing which is important to also mention is that when we study Kitab al-Janaiz, especially the fact that we're talking about death and we are talking about janazah and so on, it shouldn't be something which is only a purely academic thing that we study, what's the ruling on this, what's the ruling on that. But it should be something that reminds us of death itself and of the hereafter. And that just as we are learning on how to wash a dead body, that one day it will be our body that will be washed. And just as we are learning on how to pray upon the deceased, one day it will be us that people will be praying over. And then we learn how to place the dead body in the grave, one day it will be us that will be placed in the grave. So this is something which will actually increase our iman, and iman in the last day, iman in death, and place the fear of Allah and the fear of the punishment and so on. So it should take us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it shouldn't be something which is purely academic. So without delay, let's go through it inshallah, and hopefully we can take the whole thing today inshallah. I'm going to try to finish the book today inshallah. Like I said, I'm not going to mention too much extra information because it's not really needed. It's not really needed. And there are separate books written on this as well. Imam al-Albani rahimahullah, he has a book regarding the fiqh of janaiz as well, and so on. So there's a lot of works on it, but we're going to stick to the book that we are studying and the way it has been explained. So we're going to stick to this inshallah, so that we can remain consistent in the methodology of studying this book. So the author, he says, Ad-Durus al-Thamin Ashar, the 18th lesson, or lesson number 18. Now, the laptop, the Masjid laptop is currently being repaired, so we can't share the screen, but make sure you follow the PDF or the printout if you have it. So he says, chapter 18, he titles it, Tajheezul Mayyiti wa Salatu alayhi wa Dafnuhu. Preparing the dead body, praying, and the burial. So tajheez, from the Arabic word jahaza, means to prepare something. So preparing the dead body. وَالصَّلَاةُ عَلَيْهِ, and then praying salah upon it. وَدَفْنُهُ, dafn is the burial of the body. So he says, وَإِلَيْكَ تَفْصِيلُ ذَلِكَ. Here is the details of it. And he says, أولا, number one. So the way Ibn Baz rahimahullah in his book, the way he summarized it is in 12 points. Each point is like a different issue. The first issue is what we do before a person passes away. So if somebody's on his deathbed, what are the things that we do? He says, يُشْرَعُ تَلْقِينُ الْمُحْتَضِرِ, that it is recommended to do talqeen. Now, I'm going to read the Arabic and the translate, because I've got it in front of me. But the English, I'm sure you guys can read it as well. But based on the Arabic, who remembers what talqeen means? We took it right in the beginning when we talked about how to teach, one of the ways to teach Quran. We said the first way to teach Quran is doing talqeen. Yeah, so it's when you say the words and then the person just repeats. You say he says ru, dhu, billahi, billahi, like that. He repeats what you say. That's called talqeen. So it's saying it's legislated for a person to do talqeen of the one who's on his deathbed, i.e. to say to the person who's on his deathbed, La ilaha illallah. In other words, somebody's on his deathbed, you say to them, say La ilaha illallah. And in return, you want them to say La ilaha illallah. Okay, why is this? Due to the hadith in Sahih Muslim where the Prophet ﷺ said, لَقِّنُوا مَوْتَاكُمْ, do talqeen of those who are dying, La ilaha illallah. Okay, so in the translation you've got, instruct those dying to say La ilaha illallah, that's the meaning. And the actual Arabic is mawtakum, which one could maybe translate to you're dead. But the meaning here is those who are about to die, and those who are on their deathbed or those who are dying. Likewise, there's another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا مِن مَيِّتٍ يَمُوتُ, that there's no person who passes away except if the Yasin is recited upon him, then Allah makes things easy for him. Again here, there's no person who passes away. The ulama say two things regarding this hadith. Because you see some people recite Surah Yasin afterwards, right? Firstly, the ulama say this is somebody who's about to die. So it's not somebody who's passed away, then you recite Surah Yasin. No, it's got, that's not from the Sunnah, nor did any of the Sahaba or anyone understand it like that. It's if they're about to die. And that's because of the meanings which are in Surah Yasin and how it reminds the person of the hereafter and so on. But the second point that is mentioned is that the hadith is da'if. The hadith is weak. The hadith is weak. Another issue regarding this is, the ulama they mention, is that you shouldn't be too persistent upon telling the person to say La ilaha illallah. So if you say it a few times and he doesn't say it, you should stop. Why? Because maybe the person's not able to say it, and then, or if he's not saying it, but you constantly repeating your request, a person becomes annoyed. And then he becomes annoyed at saying La ilaha illallah. Or he says something else which goes against Islam or against Allah and so on. And that's not something that's not something that somebody wants to be saying just before they are passing away. So the ulama they say, you tell them a couple of times, 3 times, or just a few times. And if they answer, alhamdulillah, they answer. If they don't, you leave them. Then you can come back to it later if you have time later. But you shouldn't do it too much so that a bad consequence does not come out. And then after that, he says, ثانيا, second. So the second issue, this is as soon as a person passes away, what do you do? إذا تيقن موته. If you are certain of his death, then أغمضت عيناه وشد لحياه. The eye should be closed and the beard should be tightened together. So you actually get the beard and you actually like you tighten it up and you close it basically. You can put stuff around it and so on. And that's because of a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which is narrated in Sahih Muslim. Then he says, ثالث, number 3. يجب تغسيل الميت المسلم. He mentions now, the point number 3 is regarding the ruling on washing the dead body. What's the ruling on washing the dead body? And he says, it is obligatory to wash the dead Muslim body. And in fact, if you want to mention a bit more detail, then we say it is fardu kifayah. It is a communal obligation. A communal obligation. Inshallah in Usul al-Fiqh we will study different types of obligations and so on. one of the way the ulama split obligations is they split it into two. Fardu ayn and fardu kifayah. Fardu ayn means an individual obligation, and fardu kifayah means a communal obligation. So an individual obligation is something which is obligatory upon every single individual to do. So for example, 5 daily prayers. As long as a person has reached age of puberty and he has intellect, then it is obligatory upon that person to pray every single prayer. But then you have certain actions which are not obligatory upon every single person, but they are obligatory on the community as a whole. And the definition the ulama give is that a communal obligation is something which if enough people do it, then it falls off the shoulders of everybody else. If enough people do it, it falls off the shoulders of everybody else. Meaning, as long as it is done and enough people fulfill that condition of doing it, then the obligation has been lifted from everybody. But if nobody does it, then everybody is sinning. So for an example of that is the adhan. The adhan is something we have to do for salah, right? But is it obligatory upon every single individual? I get up to do adhan, then you get up to do adhan, then Aman gets up to do adhan, then Awab, then A'mash. No, just one person does it. So as long as one person does it in that community, in that area, that suffices for everybody. So likewise, washing the dead body. It is fardu kifayah. The body has to be washed. As long as one person does it, it's fine. And then he says, إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ شَهِيدًا, except the martyr who dies in battle. This is an exception. So one person who is not prayed, is not washed, it is the martyr, the one who dies in battle. فَإِنَّهُ لَا يُغَسَّلْ وَلَا يُصَلَّى عَلَيْهِ. You don't wash him, nor do you pray salah. You don't need to pray janazah salah. Now the majority of the ulama say you don't pray janazah. And some ulama say it's permissible if you want to, but it's not obligatory. It's permissible if you want to, but it is not obligatory. Like Imam Ahmad, Shaykh al-Islam, Ibn al-Qayyim, Albani, and a few others, they say if you want to, you can, but it's not obligatory. And the majority say you don't at all. But the point here is that it is an exception, that the one who dies in battle, you do not need to wash, nor is it obligatory for you to pray over them. Rather, you bury them as they were. So in the state that you found them, that's how you bury them, because that's what the Prophet ﷺ did. Then he says, number 4, رابعا, fourthly, صفة غسل الميت, the description of washing the dead body. The description of washing the dead body. So let's read what he says. He says, the private parts are covered. So basically, obviously before this, if the person who's passed away has clothing on, then you take off their clothing. And in terms of who, obviously take out the clothing, and then you, as the Shaykh says, then you cover their private parts. Okay? Now, who attends the washing of the body? Only those that need to be there. And the ones that need to be there is the one washing, and then if he needs a helper with him, somebody who pours the water and so on, them too. So if a body is being washed, who attends? Just the ones that need to be there, i.e. the one washing the body, and then if he has somebody there to help him pour the water, and so on. And yes, we're going to get to that. Another exception is a student of knowledge. If somebody is trying to learn how to wash dead body, they can also be present to watch how to wash the dead body. As for anybody more, just for anybody else, then it's not something that should be done. Why? Because maybe there's some things on the person's body that he didn't want anyone to see, and so on. So there's no need. If there's no need for a person to be there at that time, then they should not be there. I'm just going to come point number 6. Then he says, then he or she is slightly raised and the stomach is squeezed gently. So you just like pat over the stomach, because just in case if anything is left in the stomach, then it can be cleaned and that can be taken out. Then he says, the one washing the body wraps a cloth to his own hand and washes the body with it. So he doesn't use his hand and actually clean the dead body with his own hand. He has, he puts some cloth around it, or he wears something, then he washes the body with that. Then he makes wudu of the dead person. So what does he do? He does wudu. So he washes the dead person's hands, and then his face, then his arms, and so on. Yeah, just like we normally do wudu. Then his head and his beard is washed with water and sidr or something similar to it. Now sidr, I'm not sure what the name is in English, but it's a substance which has some cleaning properties to it. That's why in Muhammad Prophet he would use it, and he commanded it. اغسلوه بماء وسدر. Wash him with water and sidr. If you don't have sidr, then you can use anything, soap or anything else that would do the job as well. Hence why the Shaykh he says, or something similar to it. Then he washes his right side and then his left side 3 times. Same as ghusl. If you remember how we took the way to do ghusl, it's the same. What do we do in ghusl? You do wudu first, then you wash the right side, then you wash the left side, right? It's the same thing here. And every time he passes his hand by his stomach, if anything comes out, he washes it. There's another thing I don't think the Shaykh mentioned. There's more. But I mention now in case it's not mentioned. Is there something else they use which is called kafur? Now kafur, again I don't know what it's called in English, but it's a substance that has a nice smell to it, right? So that's something that is also used, but in the last wash. You don't need to use it in the first few washes. In the last wash, you use that so that a nice smell comes out. Then he says, then one blocks the passage with a piece of cotton or something similar. So for example, the nose and stuff, you put cotton in there and so on. So all the passages you close. If it does not stop excrement from coming out, then with earth mixed with water or the contemporary clinical materials used such as plasters. So if something is coming out from somewhere, the part of the body, and by you putting cotton there is not stopping it, you can use something else, plasters or anything that basically closes that gap. Then he repeats his wudu, if something comes out and so on. If washing the body parts 3 times is not sufficient, he can wash them 5 or 7 times each. And if you're washing the body 3 times and there's still some dirt on it, then you can wash it more. You can wash it more. 5 to 7 times. 5 or 7 times. Then the body is dried with cloth. Scent is applied to the armpits and to the bottom of the thighs and the parts one prostrates on. It is better if scent is applied to the entire body. Incense should also be applied to the shrouds. The white cloth that you have. We're going to talk about how many cloths are needed. But you put bukhur and you put nice, or you put tib, you put nice smell onto that as well. If the mustache and the nails are long, they could be shortened or left alone. So you are allowed to cut the nails and hair and so on. But if you fear that you're going to damage the body, then you leave it. Right? You feel like, okay, by me cutting his nails, I'm going to cut his skin. Or by me cutting his hair, I'm going to cut him or something like that, then you leave it. Because you don't want to damage or harm the body. The hair should not be loose and around the private part should not be shaved. Those parts you just leave. Nor should one be circumcised due to the lack of evidence to support that. The woman's hair should be braided into 3 parts and should hang down behind her. Okay, that's the washing of the dead body. Now, subhanAllah, I forgot to get it, but what would have been best if I got a video up for you and actually showing you guys how to do it. But I forgot. I'm sure if you just type it online, you should find some sort of demonstration or tutorial and how to do it. If you actually have some people, what they do, they bring like a dummy in and show you exactly how to wash it. I think before I started Qadr Zakat, Allah came. He did a 1-day course. Yusuf? Did he? Yeah? You remember? Did he have actually like a dummy and showed you how to wash it? No, Hajj was 2 weeks ago. I'm talking about over a year ago. About janazah and so on. Okay, who did he use? Which human? Who did he use? Oh, those kids. Okay, if you watch that video, I'm sure there's other videos as well. Okay. Number 5, shrouding the dead body. This is known as takfeenul mayyit, from the word kafan. Kafan means to shroud. You washed him, now you're going to clothe him. Shrouding, i.e. you clothe him. The best is to shroud the man in 3 pieces of white cloth. Okay, so normally what happens is that you put 3 pieces out, you place the body on top, and then you close the first layer, then you close the second layer, and then you close the third layer. Okay? Then he says, no shirt, no head turban, as the Prophet ﷺ was clothed. He should be wrapped on it gradually, as I mentioned. So you put 3 down, and then you close one, then you close another, and then you close the other. And you tie it and so on, we should say it. It is fine if one is buried on a shirt, pants, and a sheet. The woman should be shrouded in 5 pieces of cloth: a long shirt, head cover, a waist wrapper, and 2 pieces of cloth that are wrapped around her. A small boy is shrouded in 1 to 3 pieces of cloth, and a small girl is shrouded in 1 long shirt and 2 pieces of cloth. The obligation for everyone is 1 piece of cloth that covers the entire body. And the bare minimum is what? Just 1 cloth that covers you. But the best is to have 3, and for a woman to have 5. Full body. Yeah, head to toe. Yeah. Wallahu alam. However, there's an exception. If the deceased is in the state of ihram, so somebody's gone to the Hajj or Umrah, and in the state of ihram they died, then they should be washed with water and sidr. He should be shrouded in the 2 pieces of cloth that he or she had on, or other than his. Yani, you just use ihram. You don't use 3 pieces, 4 pieces, 5 pieces. No. Why? Because they're in the state of ihram. And it also comes in a hadith that they'll be resurrected in the same state as well. Okay? So you do them in the ihram. Now if you remember, there were certain things which were not allowed during ihram. You're not allowed to wear perfume. You're not allowed to cut your nails and so on. So because this person, in one sense, he's considered still in the state of ihram, right? You're not allowed to do those things. So let's read. He says, his head and face should not be covered. Why? Because you're not allowed to cover your head in ihram, remember. Nor should scent be applied to him, since they will surely be resurrected on the day of judgment, saying the talbiyah. That's the hadith, right? This has been narrated authentically from the Prophet ﷺ. If the one in the state of ihram is a woman, then his shroud is like others. However, scent should not be applied to her. Her face should not be covered with the face veil, nor with her hands with gloves. However, her face and hands should be covered with the shroud she is wrapped with, as is described previously how to prepare the deceased woman. And similar to the ihram we mentioned during Hajj. Right, number 6, now we are moving on. It's just an extra rule now, after washing and after and just before Salah, which is a question that you basically asked. And he says, number 6, أحق الناس بغسله والصلاة عليه ودفنه. The one who is the most deserving, and the one who has the most right to wash the dead body and to lead the prayer and to bury as well, وصيه في ذلك. That the one the deceased has appointed in his will. So if he says, I want so and so to lead the Salah, I want so and so to wash my body, they are the ones who do so. If not, then the one who has the most right is the father, and then the grandfather, and then the closest relatives. Okay, so it can be anyone, but who has the most right? It's basically the closest relatives. Okay? This is regarding a man. The most deserving of washing the woman, the one she has appointed in her will, then the mother, then the grandmother, and then the closest female relatives. The spouses may wash one another. So if husband dies, it's permissible for the wife to wash the husband. Likewise, if the wife dies, it's permissible for the husband to wash the wife. And this is mentioned because the Hanafis, they say it's not permissible. The reason they say it's not permissible is because they say once a person passes away, they're no longer husband and wife. Why? Because, for example, if a woman, her husband dies, it's permissible for her to marry somebody else now. So this shows that they are no longer husband and wife with death. So therefore, they're no longer mahrums for one another. So therefore, she can't touch her body and his body, and she can't wash him, and vice versa. However, that is not correct, because you can see that they are taking this ruling from the intellect, but they've left off narrations. And what are these narrations? The Shaykh mentions it here. What did he say? The spouses may wash one another, since the wife of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh had washed him, and Fatima was washed by Ali radiallahu anhu. So you can see the Sahaba washed their spouses. And not any Sahaba, but the Khulafa, Abu Bakr and then Ali radiallahu anhuma. So that shows that it is permissible. Now, number 7 is Sifatu Salati ala al-Mayyit. How to pray the Janazah Salah. And I'm going to keep this simple for you guys, inshallah. Okay, so reading it is quite long. I'll summarize how to do Janazah Salah. In Janazah Salah, there's no ruku' and there's no sujood. There's no ruku' and there's no sujood. That's why sometimes if there's less space, they'll say to everyone, come forward and have 2 safs and 1 saf. Because you don't need to move forward or anything, right? You basically say Allahu Akbar 4 times. So if you hear me say 4 takbirat, takbir is I think Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and Allahu Akbar, and Allahu Akbar. Okay. After each Allahu Akbar, you say something. After the first Allahu Akbar, you recite Surah Fatiha. And a small surah after it as well. Now, Dua al-Istiftah, the Dua of opening, do you recite it or not? Now, there's nothing being narrated specifically for Janazah Salah. However, not from the Sahaba, not from the Prophet. I think it's been narrated on some of the Tabi'een, but it's nothing being narrated. But since, it could be understood that every other Salah the Prophet prayed, he did it, right? And, and even though some of the Tabi'een did it, Tabi'een, them doing it is not dalil, not like the Sahaba. But for that reason, the ulama say it's not an issue. If somebody does want to say Dua al-Istiftah in the Janazah Salah, it's not a big issue, because every Salah normally the Prophet prayed, he would have it. Okay? But some ulama are a bit more strict to saying that no, you shouldn't say it because it's not being narrated. So if you want to stick to that and that is safer, and that's something good, inshallah. So you recite Surah Fatiha, and then you recite a small surah after it. Right? And by the way, another question: do you recite out loud or do you recite quietly? That's the majority of the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the sunnah is to recite quietly. It's to do it quietly. Now, as for doing it out loud, it is permissible. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu did it as well. However, the ulama say the reason it was done out loud was just to teach the people what to say. So if you do it here and there, then that's completely fine. But it's not something that should be done all of the time. And the actual sunnah is to recite it quietly. But then we have a lot of issues, which is sometimes parents, the family members will come and say, look, we don't know any of the du'as. At least make a du'a so that we can say Ameen behind you. It's quite sad that if somebody passes away in your family, you don't even know how to pray Janazah Salah for them. So it's an issue. That's why every person needs to study and needs to learn how to pray Janazah Salah and memorize the du'as. So that's the first takbir. So you say Allahu Akbar, recite Surah Fatiha, recite a small surah. Then you say Allahu Akbar again. And then you make dua, you send salah upon the Prophet ﷺ. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim till end. So after the second one, what do? You send salah upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then you say Allahu Akbar again, the third time. And after the third time, you make dua for the deceased. You make dua for the deceased. Now there are many du'as. There's some. Now in English, you've got a translation of it. If you look at the Arabic PDF, and I've sent the Arabic PDF, page 156 in the Arabic, you'll see or if you use any of the Fortress of Muslim or any of the books or apps, you can see the du'as there. But there's many du'as. Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu, O Allah, forgive him and have mercy upon him. Wa'afihi wa'afu anhu wa akrim nuzulahu wa wasi' madkhalahu till the end. Okay, that's one. Then you have Allahumma ighfir li hayyina wa mayyitina wa shahidina wa ghaibina. O Allah, forgive those who are alive from us, those who have passed away, those who are present, those who are absent, till the end. Okay. Another one which is Allahumma abduk wa ibn amatik ihtaja ila rahmatik. Oh Allah, your slave, the son of your female slave, is in need of your mercy. So so forgive them if they have done good, then increase them in goodness. If they have done bad, forgive their sins, and so on. And there's other du'as as well that person can say in the janazah. there's something written in the Arabic. So if you want to memorize it, either go to the Arabic of the book, or use the books Fortress of a Muslim and so on, and memorize the du'as. Everyone should memorize at least, 2 du'as for janazah. I would say that the 2 most famous ones which are normally mentioned, because it's sahih and so on, is Allahumma ighfir li hayyina wa mayyitina wa shahidina wa ghaibina wa saghirina wa kabirina wa dhakrina wa unthana, Allahumma man ahyaytahu minna fa ahyi ala al-islam wa man tawaffaytahu minna fa tawaffahu ala al-iman. Right? This is one. Then you got another one which is a bit longer. Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu wa'afihi wa'afu anhu wa akrim nuzulahu wa wasi' madkhalahu wa aghsilhu bil ma'i wa thalji wal barad wa naqqihi min al-khataaya wa yunqqa ath-thawb al-abyad min ad-danas wa abdilhu daran khayran min darihi wa ahlan khayran min ahlihi wa zawjan khayran min zawjihi wa adkhilhu al-jannah wa a'idhu min 'adhab al-qabr wa 'adhab an-nar. Try to memorize both of them. If somebody reminds me later, I might even send in the group some of the du'as, inshallah. Okay? And if I remember, I'll add it into the description of the group, the video as well. And if I forget, one of you guys can copy and paste it in the comments or something. One point to point out though is Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu means, oh Allah, forgive him and have mercy upon him. If it's a woman, change the pronoun. Oh Allah, forgive her and have mercy upon her. So that means in Arabic, so Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu, Allahumma ighfir laha warhamha wa'afiha wa'afu anha wa akrim nuzulaha wa wasi' madkhalaha, and so on. So make sure you make that differentiation, okay? There's one brother in Oldham. This is when you have Masjid politics and so on, right? There's one brother, they wanted him. He's a youngster, and he started studying at Medina, but all he was studying was simple Arabic. You know how you guys think Hadha Kitab and Zalika Qalam and so on. But family and stuff were one of those that they always wanted to push him forward, and I never got involved. So they asked me to do janazah, and later on they wanted him to do it. I said, alright, whatever, I don't care. And they said, oh, because he knew the guy passed away. I said, okay, whatever. In the janazah salah, the guy who passed away is his friend's dad. He's saying, like, along the lines of, oh Allah, forgive her, to a guy, and have mercy upon her. And so I'm just there like, what's this guy doing? Imagine you're dying, you're dead, and you hear the Imam just calling you a female. And I'm saying, maybe we laugh, now, but it's actually serious. Obviously, no one knows. I didn't really mention it to anyone because it's done now. Right? Imagine I went around telling everyone that, oh, he called your dad a female. If people knew what he was saying, it would have been an issue. Right? So, that's why even though we say the person has a right to tell who to lead, make sure it's a person of knowledge, somebody who's actually qualified. Now, then Shaykh, he does say, on the next page, he says, it is from the sunnah for the imam to stand by the head of the body if it is a man. So imagine we have the man laying down here. Let's say the head's over here, on my left, which is your right, my left, over here. The head's over here, and the feet are over here. Where does the imam stand? He stands in line with the head. Okay? Right, let's say the head's here. Okay. The man stands in line with the head. If it's a woman, let's say, okay, woman's not going to be this small, but let's say that's big the woman is, just so it fits on the camera, yeah? The man comes, the imam stands in the middle. For a woman, he stands in line with the head. For the woman, he stands in the middle. Okay? So if you read, it is from the sunnah for the imam to stand by the head of the body if it is a man, and in the middle if it is a woman. If there is more than one deceased person, the imam should stand right behind the man, and the woman should be closer to the qibla. Meaning, so let's say it's one man and 2 women. The man is first, and the women are further away. They're closer to the qibla, further away from the imam. If there are also children, now with children, just before we move on, even the dua, the Shaykh mentions it as well. The ulama mention the dua for the child, if a child passes away, is slightly different. There's another dua, which is Allahumma ja'alhu faratan wa dhukhran liwalidayhi wa shafi'an mujaban, Allahumma thaqil bihi mawazinahuma, till the end. And what that basically is basically a dua, not for the child, but for the parents. Why? The child's got no sins. The child has no sins, so there's no need to ask Allah to forgive him and to have mercy upon him. The child has no sins. So the other dua, again, is there in the Arabic. You make it for the You make for the parents that, make this a means for the parents, a means of, an asset for them on the day of judgment, and so on. Yeah. In Islam, a child is somebody who's not reached age of puberty, and a man or an adult, as soon as they reach puberty, they're an adult. No. Yeah. Takbirat, you raise your hands. No. So he says, if there is also children with both of them, the boy should be before the woman and the girl after her. So let's say there's man, boy, woman, girl. In that order, you put the man first, then you put the boy, then you put the woman, and then the girl, and so on. Yeah? The head of the boy should be straight with the man's head, and the girl's head should be the same level as the woman's head, and the woman's waist should be by the man's head. So it is more men and women. Yeah, so then they don't put it all in an exact straight line. The woman is where the woman's waist should be by the man's head. So it's slightly, slightly different. The view of praying should all be behind the imam, unless one person cannot find a place behind the imam, then he can stand to his right. So if there's no, even in normal salah, if there's no space, you can't just get someone to come, pray next to the imam. I had to do that once for one. I think I did khutbah in Oldham. 20 people. I had to grab one of the kids, like, you come here, pray next to me. Right, point number 8. How to bury the deceased. Now we're talking about how to bury the deceased. The sunnah is to dig up the grave until the waist of the man. No. Oh, yeah, so sorry, yeah. So you made your dua, then you say Allah Akbar, and then do salam. That's it. So how to pray janazah salah, let me repeat. Allah Akbar, Surah Fatiha, small surah. Allah Akbar, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allahu Akbar, Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu. Allahu Akbar, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You can do 2 salams, you can do 1 as well. So in Haramain, they do 1 salam. Okay. The sunnah is to dig the grave until the waist of a man, to have another opening inside of the grave on the direction of the Qibla. So basically, you dig a grave. That's not enough. At the bottom of the grave, you dig another small little area. So the person is not actually buried right in the middle. Obviously, in England, I don't know what the rulings are. I'm not sure the rulings and regulations. If you have to keep it in the middle, then you keep it in the middle. But if you go Saudi, if you go Masjid Nabawi, you can follow the janazah after salah. You can actually see it. So you'll see the man take the body down, and then let's say this is the grave, right? At the bottom, on one side, which is what you start off is the right side. Okay, on the right hand side there's another gap, another hole, and that's where the person is actually buried into. That's what the person actually buried into. So he says, to have another opening inside on the grave on the direction of the Qibla, to put the deceased in this opening on the right side, and to untie the knots and leave them there. So it didn't really mention it. I don't know if the English translation missed it out, but when we talked about the coffin and the pieces of cloth closing it on top of the dead body, once it's closed, you tie it. So you put the cloth over the dead body, you actually tie it into a knot. So once you've placed the dead body in the grave, then you untie that knot. Once you actually place the dead body in the grave, then you untie that knot. And then you leave them there. The face should not be exposed, whether it is a male or female. Then bricks should be put behind him to protect the body from the earth. So, because that body is in that little lahad, they call it a lahad, yeah? It's in that little hole on the side, you put bricks. Now, once it's in, of course, you put bricks, and then it's in there, yeah? The bricks should be put behind him to protect the body from the earth. If bricks cannot be found, anything else which will prevent the earth hitting the body directly, such as stones, plates, or wood, it is recommended to say, Bismillah wa ala millati Rasulillah, which means in the name of Allah and according to the way the Messenger of Allah. The earth above the grave should be 1 handspan. Small pebbles should be put on top of it, and it should be watered if possible. Meaning, after you've buried the dead and you've closed the grave, now you've put sand and whatever it is, right? that grave should not be lifted. In fact, there's a narration we studied in Kitab al-Tawheed, I think Ali radiallahu anhu, he said one of the things that the Messenger of Allah left me with, that one of the last things that he mentioned, is that there shouldn't be a grave which is elevated except that you destroy it, you get rid of it. Meaning, the grave shouldn't be something high. It should be in level with the earth. But you can take it level with the earth, but it says one handspan. Basically, that much. That's how high. Let's say this is the earth. That's how high you can have it, just till there. Basically, just so there's some things people know. All right, there's a grave here. Right? You're not just walking on it and then no one builds a football pitch on top of it later or something. So it's there, so you know. Okay, there's a grave here. You know that something is there. Yes. I don't know about if the tombstones take the same ruling as this, but with tombstones, you shouldn't put a tombstone. The only time I think ulama would allow it is if there's so many graves and because you can't identify, you just put that person's name. But you know how some people decorate it and they add so much information on. Sometimes they'll add ayat on. All of that is innovation. All of that is innovation. As for if a tombstone is put there just for the name, just so people know, right, this is the grave of so and so. Does it have to be? Is that big as well? I don't know. Also, another thing comes to my mind. I'm just forgetting right now because I know they do it in Medina. If it's a man, I think they put one rock on top. If it's a woman, they put 2 rocks on top, just to identify. But I can't remember the ruling of that right now. So, yeah, not allowed. It is also recommended for those following the funeral to stand at the grave and supplicate for the dead person, since the Prophet used to stand over the grave after the burying the deceased and say, ask forgiveness, istaghfiru li akhikum fa innahu al-ana yus'al, seek forgiveness for your brother and ask him to, or wasallallahu lahu tathbit, and ask him to remain firm, for now, since now he is being questioned. So basically, after you've buried the body and the grave has been closed and everything, you should stay there making dua. And everyone makes dua individually, not this group dua or anything like that. Right? So you stay there and then you make dua. Why? Because now the person's questioning has started. The angels are going to come to him. Who is your Lord? Who is your Prophet? What is your religion? And so on. Number 9. Number 9 is talking about if you have missed the janazah, what do you do? He says, it is also allowed for the one who did not pray on it to pray on it after burying it, since the Prophet ﷺ did that. So if you miss the janazah, you can pray the janazah later. He says, that is if the period between the burial and the prayer is less than a month. Otherwise, it is not allowed. The Prophet ﷺ did not pray for anyone after a month had passed by. Okay? Obviously, there's khilaf in this and so on, but we can talk about that in the bigger books. But basically, according to Ibn Baz, rahimahullah, it's only till a month, because the Prophet never did it after a month. And the wisdom behind that, wallahu alam, is that it's a short time span. Otherwise, people will be going now to people who fasted 1,000 years ago and praying salah and everything, and that leads to shirk and so many other issues as well. Number 10. Number 10 is now we're gonna start talking a bit more about the mourning period and so on. Now, number 10 is something very important because a lot of people do it, and it happens in our masajid as well, which is something which is wrong. It is not allowed for the family of the deceased to make food for the people. So let's say your father passes away, right? What do people normally do in Puris? Right? People will come to give condolences. Who's the one making the food? Who's the one paying for the food? The family of the deceased. Right? That not only does it go against the hadith, we're going to mention now, secondly, it doesn't make sense either. Right? What should be happening is if other people bring food in for the family of the deceased, that's fine. That is fine. Why? Because they're busy mourning. You need to make things easy for them. They shouldn't be thinking about food and so on. So you give them food, not the other way around. Then they spend so much and then they have to clean up later as well and all of that. That's even logically it makes things difficult. I don't get it. Okay? So that is something which is wrong. And generally as well, the asl when it comes to condolences, the asl is that you don't specify a place for it. When you see them, you give your condolences, and that's it. Okay? Now, normally, if people end up going to the house, because obviously that's what the people are, and there's not enough space in the house, so people say, let's sit in the masjid. I've asked different ulama regarding what's the ruling of sitting in the masjid and specifying 3 days or whatever it is. 3 days is 3 days of condolences, but specifying the masjid for it. Some ulama said it's allowed. It's not a problem because there's no space for them at home, so this is the only space they find, so therefore we do it here. And some ulama are very strict against it. No, it's a bid'ah, you can't do that. Okay? Me, at the moment, I'm leaning more towards that. Only you should do it at home, but if you know like there's no space at home whatsoever and there's no way you can accommodate, then you could maybe use it. Okay, because you're not using because it's a masjid, it's because you don't really have a choice. But it's not something that should be done all the time. Sometimes people, as soon as they hear somebody passes away, the first question is, right, which masjid are they saying that? It's just become a thing. Right, and that is something which is not correct. Anyways, he says, number 10th, it is not allowed for the family of the deceased to make food for the people due to the saying of the noble companion Jarir Abdullah al-Bajali radiallahu anh, we would consider gathering at the deceased family and making food after the burial from the prohibited mourning. Then he says, as for making food for them and for the guests, then that is allowed. Okay, so if somebody makes food for them and for other guests who have come, that's fine. As for the family making food for everyone, that's not allowed. It is allowed for relatives and neighbors to make food for them, since when the Prophet ﷺ heard about the death of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib in Sham, he ordered his family to make food for the family of Ja'far and said, it has come to them that which will keep them busy. It is acceptable for the family of the deceased to invite their neighbors or others other than them to eat from the food that has been gifted to them. So if somebody gives you food, you got a lot of food, somebody's gifted it to you. Now that food, that family can give to others, because they're not made it, it's not any extra hassle they've gone through. There is no specific time specified in the Islamic sources. Okay. Now some ulama do say the mourning period is 3 days. But it seems that Shaykh Ibn Baz is saying there's no specific time. Number 11, we're going to talk about something called hidad. Hidad is basically mourning for the woman, and what it means is that the woman, she leaves off beautification, jewelry, makeup, perfume, all of these things for the mourning period. Now what is that mourning period? The Shaykh, he says, it is not allowed for the woman to mourn the deceased, which includes all the things that I mentioned, more than 3 days except for her husband. It is a must upon her to mourn him for 4 months and 10 days. Okay, so it's different for the husband, right? And the reason for that, wallahu alam, is because so it's, 4 months and 10 days. Only after that she can remarry, not straight away. Why? That's because in case if she is pregnant, we know exactly who the father is, basically. In terms of leaving her beautification and so on, does that mean she has to wear black? And the answer is no. There's nothing specific. There's no specific color. In fact, Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he does mention that if people specify black and they think, oh, that's how we mourn, then that's an innovation. That is an innovation. He says, Ibn Baz, he says, however, if she is pregnant, then until she gives birth, due to this being established authentically from the Sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Obviously, if she's pregnant, she's giving birth, then you don't have an issue on who the father is. The man is not allowed to mourn any of his relatives or other than them. What it means by mourning here is in the same way of the woman. Wallahu a'lam. I saw him being upset, and that's natural. 12th, last point. He says, يُشْرَعُ لِلرِّجَالِ, it is recommended for the men to visit the graves once in a while to supplicate for them, ask mercy for them, and to remember death and what comes after it, due to the saying of the Prophet ﷺ, visit the graveyards as it will remind you the next life. So in the beginning of Islam, the Prophet actually prohibited the Sahaba from visiting the graveyards. And that's why he says, كُنْتُ نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْ زِيَارَةِ الْقَبُورِ, زِيَارَةِ الْقُبُورِ, that I used to prohibit you from visiting the graves. فَزُورُوهَا, but now you can visit them. Why? فَإِنَّهَا تُذَكِّرُكُمُ الْآخِرَةِ, because it reminds you of the akhirah. So once the Prophet ﷺ realized that Aqidah, Iman and Tawheed was firm in the hearts of the Sahaba, then he moved on and he realized that okay, shirk is not going to take place. Once the Prophet ﷺ felt safe of that, he said okay, you should go visit the graves, because one benefit the Prophet mentioned is that it reminds you of the akhirah, it reminds you of death, it reminds you of the hereafter. And the second benefit is that you make dua for, not to, but for the people who have passed away. And from the du'as, you got the English here, when you enter the graveyard, there's a dua. Assalamu alaikum, أهل الديار من المؤمنين والمسلمين وإنا إن شاء الله بكم للاحقون نسأل الله لنا ولكم العافية يرحم الله المستقبلين منا والمستأخرين. As for women, what's the ruling on women visiting the graves? The ulama differ. Those generally in Saudi and so on, they're a bit more stricter on this issue. So what does Shaykh Ibn Baz say? He says, the English translation says, it is not befitting for the women to visit the graves, since the Prophet said, or he cursed the women that frequently visit the graves. Moreover, it is feared that visiting the graves will be difficult upon them to remain patient. Likewise, it is not allowed for them to follow the funeral to a graveyard, since the Prophet ﷺ ordered them not to do that. As for the prayer in the masjid or the prayer place, then it is Islamic correct for both men and women. Yani, the place where the Salatul Janazah and stuff, women can pray that. As for women, visiting the graves, there are different opinions. One is that they're not allowed at all. The other opinion, which is the one that we lean more towards, is that it's not allowed for them to frequently visit the graves. Because there's a hadith that the Prophet said that may Allah have mercy upon the women that visit the graves. In one narration, I think Zawarat, those that frequently visit. So those that frequently visit again and again and again and go again and again, that's what's not allowed. But the ulama say that there's a hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha when she went to the Prophet ﷺ asking her for the dua to say when going to the graveyard. And the Prophet ﷺ taught her the dua. So the ulama say that why would the Prophet teach her the dua if it wasn't allowed for her to go? So the fact that the Prophet ﷺ taught her showed that she would have gone, showing that it is permissible to do so. But we say it's not something that women should be doing too frequently. Why? Because generally the hearts are a bit more weaker, they tend to wail more, cry more, and they won't have as much patience. That's why we say that they should not be going frequently. Shaykh Haytham Sarhan does add this one point here, where he mentions the ruling on visiting the graves. So there's different types of visiting. There's that visiting which is Islamic. Then there's that visiting which is an innovation, and then there's that visiting which is a form of shirk. As for that visiting which is Islamic, then that is when you go to remember the akhirah and to supplicate and make dua for those who have passed away, without doing anything which opposes the Islamic teachings. So one of the things that is not allowed for a person to do is travel for the sake of a grave. Meaning, somebody says, I want to travel now from here to London just to go to the grave of my father. That's not allowed. You can't travel. The Prophet said, "La tashaddu rihal illa ila thalathati masajid." You can only travel for the sake of 3 masajid. When it comes to like an Islamic worship and for the sake of the masjid and so on. So, and the 3 masajid obviously are Masjid al-Haram, Masjid al-Nabawi, Masjid al-Aqsa. So the ulama, they say that traveling for the sake of a grave is not allowed. So somebody says, I want to travel to Medina to visit the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, that's not allowed. However, if you go to visit Masjid al-Nabawi, and you being in Medina now, the grave is there, and then you go visit the grave and give some to the Prophet, that's fine. You go to London to meet a friend, you go to London for a conference, you go to London for work, and then you want to go visit the grave of your parents, that's fine. Because you're not traveling for the sake of the grave. So this is the Islamic type of visiting. The visiting which is an innovation is when people go to the grave just to make dua. So they make dua to Allah for themselves, but they say, you know what, I'm going to go to the grave and make dua over there. That's not allowed. Why are you specifying the grave for a place of dua? If you're going to the graveyard to remind yourself of the akhirah, and then you make dua for the people in the grave, that's different. Here I'm talking about you're making dua for yourself, but then you go to the grave to do it. Okay? That is something which is an innovation. And then shirk, the third type of visiting when it becomes shirk is when you go and you make dua to the grave itself. you go and make dua to the grave itself, then that is shirk. Yes, can you clarify number 9? Number 9 is if you miss Salatul Janazah, then you can't pray. And you can't pray at the graveyard. So you can't go in front of the grave and pray Salatul Janazah only for that person who has passed away. Again, it's clear, it's not shirk, because you can tell when someone's praying Janazah and he's not because there's no sujood, there's no ruku'. Yeah? So Janazah is allowed. If you missed it, and we said, Ibn Baz said, in the period of 1 month. Okay, that's number 9. Number 12 is just visiting the grave. Just visiting the graveyard, going to the graveyard. So if you're going to remind yourself of the akhirah, or let's say you go to Bradford Cemetery and you go and your parents are buried there, so you go, and you make dua for your parents and so on. That's fine. But now if somebody says, you know what, I need to get this job, let's go to a graveyard and make dua. That's an innovation. Why are you specifying? And most of the time it leads to shirk, because someone doesn't do that except they have some sort of belief. Maybe this Peer Sahib, because I'm doing dua next to him or something like that, it's going to be accepted. Right? That's why we just say it's innovation. And obviously if the person has that belief or he's making dua to the grave, then it becomes shirk. Okay, so number 12 is not talking about salah, it's talking about just visiting the graves. And with that, Shaykh Ibn Baz on bottom of page 184. Yeah. It's better, Allah, I don't know. I think in the masjid, because then talk about then taking the dead body to a grave. But I'm not 100% sure. There's two questions. That question, somebody else asked me a question which I wasn't sure about. Text me those questions, whoever it was. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. Yeah, if you pray a janazah over her, and I believe if the soul has been blown after 120 days, then you pray over the child as well. No. There is an issue that I think to look at. Did the baby cry or did it not cry? Even your issue. I can't remember enough to say it's permissible or recommended or... Well, I can't remember. Send me that question and we'll check it, inshallah. That's 3 questions now. Yeah, Musa, send me your question. You send me your question. What was the other question? What was yours? Oh, the size of the tombstone. Does it take the same ruling as... Yeah, send me that, inshallah. We'll have a look into it. Right, then the Shaykh, he says, bottom page 184, this is the end. May Allah praise and send peace to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family and his companions. The only thing left, we've got the small exam at the end. Let's just do the exam right now because it's small. Okay. Now these questions is not on just janazah, but it's on the mannerisms as well, because they were small chapters, right? Quick. So the Shaykh did examine all of it. For question number 1, from the Muslims' manners is practicing the Islamic etiquettes. Obviously that's true. Number 2, my religion orders me to accompany the evil people and stay away from the righteous ones. False, other way around. Number 3, Islam has taught us to treat the maids and workers well. True. It is okay to accompany those who harm others verbally and physically. False. I enjoy cursing someone who curses me. False. Eye for an eye. Yeah. Why not? Someone says something to you, are you just going to take it? No, of course you don't say something back. Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ, لَمْ يَكُنْ فَاحِشًا, he never spoke anything vulgar or anything like that. We're not even allowed to curse other, religions or other deities. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Do not curse those who are worshipped besides Allah. So that why? فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Because in return they're going to curse Allah. Right? Number 6, Islam has taught me to help the poor and the weak. True. From the rights of a Muslim, another Muslim is to visit when sick and supplicate for them. True. Trying to find out the neighbor's secrets is from the Islamic mannerisms. False. You get that, right? Auntie and sometime. They know everything that's going on. The CCTV, yeah. That's not from Islamic etiquettes. Okay? Following the awrat of Muslimin is something which is not allowed. Following the private affairs of other Muslims is something which is not allowed. Number 9, the most beloved people to Allah are the ones who are the most beneficial for the people. True, that's a hadith. That's the wording of a hadith. Number 10, the supplication for leaving the house is, in the name of Allah we enter, in the name of Allah we exit, and upon our Lord we fully rely. So in Arabic that is, Bismillahi walajna wa Bismillahi ikhrajna wa ala Rabbina tawakkalna. False. What's that the dua for? Entering the house. What's the dua for leaving the house? That's one. There's another one I mentioned in the book. Allahumma inni as'aluka khayral khayra makhrajit lana. Number 11. I say to the one who says, may Allah have mercy upon you, yarhamukallah, upon hearing me praise and thank Allah after I sneeze, may Allah guide you and rectify your affairs. Yahdikum Allah yuslih balakum. True. It's true. If someone says yarhamukallah, you say yahdikum Allah. Number 12. Remembering Allah protects a Muslim and draws one closer to Allah. True. What is a sign that you love your Muslim brother or sister? There's many. You look for them what you look for yourself. Make dua for them. Give them gifts and so on. From that which shows that one's iman is deficient is being jealous of your Muslim brother and sister. True, it's deficiency in iman. Deficiency in iman in the greatness of Allah, deficiency in your iman in al-qadr, deficiency in your iman in yawm al-akhir, and so on. That's why iman in those 3 pillars are from the greatest ways to actually remove jealousy. And you can add to that making dua for them and giving them gifts as well. And also making dua for yourself. Number 16, that which is prohibited. No, sorry, what am I? Number 15. What are some of the things you can do for people to like you? Huh? Okay, there's 2 answers that I would want is firstly to have Islamic mannerisms, and secondly not to chase the happiness of the people, because the hadith Prophet ﷺ will take in 40. I'll take in the 40 hadith. I think it's hadith 31. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Izhad fi dunya yuhibbak Allah." That don't chase after and be self-sufficient from what is in the dunya, and Allah will love you. "Wazhad fima 'inda an-nas yuhibbak an-nas." And stay away from from wanting the pleasure of the people, and the people will love you. That's a hadith of Prophet ﷺ. Number 16. That which is prohibited from the intoxicants is alcohol. Depends on the meaning of the sentence. I would say false, because all intoxicants, it's not just alcohol. So when he says that which is prohibited from the intoxicants is alcohol and anything which intoxicates you, anything which gets rid of your intellect. Number 17. It is disliked to blow on the food and drink. True, it comes in the hadith. Person disliked it. So if food's hot, you just leave it and wait for it to cool down. It is recommended to lick the fingers after eating and before washing the hands. True. Being balanced regarding eating, clothing, and looking good is the best way. True. The most deserving of washing the deceased and leading the prayer is the one who he has appointed, and then the father, and then the grandfather, and then the close relatives. Paying the debt of the dead person is a must. So we studied this in fara'id, in inheritance. Even before looking at the inheritance, the first thing you have to do is that if the deceased has any outstanding debts to pay off, you have to pay them all off. Likewise, if they have any penalties, any kafara to pay off, you have to pay all of that off. Once all of that is paid, then you look at what is left for the inheritance. Number 22, the ruling on burying the deceased is recommended, a must, communal obligation. Communal obligation. The ruling on reminding the one dying to say La ilaha illallah is a must, recommended, prohibited? Recommended. The ruling on watching the deceased being washed, if the one is not the people washing him, is disliked. Yes, if you don't need to be there, it's disliked for you to be there. The knots of the shroud are untied once a person is put in the grave. True. The spouses should not wash one another since the contract of marriage ends with death. False. Men and women can wash who is. Men can wash men, women can wash women, and then they can also wash the family members, basically. Yeah. Whoever misses the funeral prayer can pray at the grave as long as the period of 1 month has not passed. Crying for the deceased is permissible without any restrictions. False. If you cry naturally, that's fine. But when it becomes wailing and you're shouting and screaming and pulling your hair, ripping your clothes, and saying things which are displeasing to Allah and so on, then it's obviously not allowed and it's a major sin. Number 30, the deceased should be placed in the opening on the side of the grave facing the Qibla. True. And with that, alhamdulillah, we have finished and completed the book Ad-Durus Al-Muhimmah. Now, mashallah, you guys made it till the end. Huh? Right. You made it till the end, whereas, I don't know, are you just half for the people that started, or less than half? Less than half. Some people dropped out, they couldn't do it. Right, the next book that we're going to go through, inshallah, is the 40 hadith of Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah. Now lessons are going to start next Tuesday, that means this Thursday you got off. Finish the book, I'll give you one lesson off. Next Tuesday we will start. Now, you should all try to memorize the book. If you memorize the book, we are going to study the 42 hadith of Imam Nawawi plus 8 extra that Ibn Rajab added. So in total 50 hadith. What? 50 a lot? No, it's not a lot. We're going to study later on the next book. The next hadith book will be Umdat al-Ahkam, which is about 450 hadith. Then the book after that, that's still nothing. We're going to study Bulugh al-Maram, which is the main book, that one you guys to memorize. 1250 hadith, about 1300 hadith. Nice. Yeah. And then after we study Bukhari, about 7,000-8,000 hadith, Muslim about 5,000-6,000 hadith, and Abu Dawood 4,800 hadith. And inshallah. So what's 50? Nothing. Okay, this is what I wanted to mention. Now, before we actually study the hadith itself, I'll just let you know, right? So I've made these worksheets. I've not fully completed it because I'm teaching the book right now in Oldham every Sunday, and I make worksheets for it. So we've done 30 lessons. The first approximately 10 lessons that we do will be introduction. And it'll be introduction into the science of hadith. What is hadith, different types of hadith, Hujjat al-Sunnah, what makes a hadith sahih, what different types of hadith, the history of hadith, how is hadith compiled, what are the books of hadith, Imam Sahih Bukhari, what is Sahih Bukhari, how did he write the book, how did he compile the book, Sahih Muslim, what's the difference in Bukhari and Muslim, Sunan Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nisa'i, Ibn Majah, what are these books, Musnad, Imam Ahmad, what is a Musnad, Musannafat, what are Musannafat, Muwatta, what's a Muwatta, all of these things, we'll go through all of that inshallah. So about 10 lessons, okay? Then after that we will go through the actual ahadith. Now, in all of them I'm going through it in a lot of detail. So we've done 30 lessons. Guess how many hadith we've done? 2. You okay? You got more time to memorize it, that's true. Now I don't know, I'm still in 2 minds. I do not know, should I go into that much detail here or no? So what I was thinking, okay, so basically I went to Dubai recently and I taught it over there. And I taught it in about 25 hours, the whole book. Taught it in about 25 hours, right? So I was thinking maybe if I would teach it somewhere in between. There's, not too much detail. Like some lessons in Oldham were long. One lesson was 3 hours. The last lesson of Hadith Jibreel was 3 hours. We talked about Qadr and a few other things. So I'm still in 2 minds. I'm not scaring you, am I? Oh, okay. So I'm still in 2 minds. I'll have to sit down and actually, I might have to edit the the worksheets and everything. But we'll see inshallah. But anyways, the point is that those worksheets, what will happen is that there'll be a separate, if you want access to the worksheets, there'll be a separate group for that. And you might have to pay to enter that group as well. It's a one-time payment or something. I'll speak to the admin and get him to sort it all out. But yeah, so I'll send them and use those worksheets. So basically, the 40 hadith of Nawawi, the introduction, those first 10 lessons, there's no material for it. So I decided, okay, you know, I'll make material for you guys. So have those worksheets. If you can print them out. It'll save you so much time. I've added all the references. I've added so much writing, especially when it comes to long quotes and sayings of the ulama. I've written it out for you. Some I haven't, because I want you guys to do some work as well. But it'll save you all the time, inshallah. Okay? So make sure, hopefully on the weekend I'll send some message out for that. Make sure if you don't want the worksheets, some students don't, they just say, we'll write ourselves. Okay? That's completely up to them. Okay? Any questions? Yeah, stick in the 2 days. Or do you want to do 3? Put your hand up if you want 3 days. For the 40 hadith on Nawawi. Two days is fine. 2 days is fine. Tuesday and Thursday. 2 days. But we're going to have long lessons though. About 1.5 hour each lesson. Okay? Make sure you set up on time. Okay? Any questions? Yeah, so we finished the book. Exam. Don't worry, we didn't do any exam on mannerisms and funeral. Don't worry, there's no exam. That would be too much. Okay, I'll make things easy for you. Make sure you revise it though. Revise the last few things. Okay? Now, anything else? Any questions? No? Okay, I'll see you guys next Tuesday, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Aman, leave this lantern for a second, please. Give me a pen 1 second.